The true biography of Felix Manalo is a good, written and created by your humble servant, Jerry Cajelon. Just call me Tatang JC. Thank you very much. Before I proceed, my very dear brothers and sisters, friends, countrymen, and acquaintances, may you please don't forget to like, share my videos, and subscribe also to my YouTube channel so you can easily follow through on my next significant manifestations or testimonies. Thank you very much. Part 7 of the Biography of Felix Manalo is a good. On July 27, 1914, and just right after the day when Sir Felix Y. Manalo established his own social club or cult society in Punta Santa Ana, which he called Iglesia ni Cristo, the biggest fear of all our countrymen did happen. World War I, or First World War, broke out. Although this war had certainly brought major fear and anxiety to our fellow Filipino countrymen, nevertheless, the works about God have never been interrupted. For those who were eloquent and explicit in religious discourses, they used this event effectively in preaching the living word, even to the point of goodness and righteousness, or based purely on lies and deceits. But the manner of preaching was always totally superb. Similarly, Sir Felix Manalo did it in his clever way of praying his accomplices or allies, wherein he emphasizes the significance and connection of the war with the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. This includes, of course, the crooked teaching about his own cult society or church as the only and exclusive sanctuary, per se, of all mankind to be in for the salvation of the soul. The church of Sir Felix Manalo, which is the social club or cult society he called Iglesia ni Cristo, was at first being administered by him with fellow former pastor and friend Justino Casanova of Christian Mission, who acted as the first treasurer. Included were the two fellow former pastors of the Methodist Church. They were Norberto Asuncion as the first secretary and Victor Magsalin. Take also into account the other two allies who were baptized in the Pasig River by Sir Felix Y. Manalo before he officially registered his society or church. They were Federico Inocencio and Engracia Ramos, who became the first deacon and deaconess, respectively. If you remember, they were with the first pitiful group of souls in the locale of Punta Santa Ana. And why so pitiful? Here is the reason why. Well, we pity so much on these dead souls, including those who attended the first church Holy Supper or Banal na Hapunan held on March 25, 1914 in that big house of Mr. Anastasio Morte. They and all together who were baptized in the so-called Local of Punta were souls excluded from God's salvation. They were not baptized again in the church officially founded and registered on July 27, 1914. Based on the teachings of Sir Felix Manalo, in order that everyone's soul has to be saved from the everlasting lake of fire, he or she must first join or enter in his official and registered cult society or church. But what happened then? They were not baptized again in his new registered and official church per se before they all died. Therefore, it is just fair to say that these first 14 pitiful souls from Local Punta, Santa Ana were not saved from the everlasting lake of fire. Apparently, for Sir Felix Manalo, every eventful day and year or date related with the establishment of his cult society, he valued it so much. He relates it with the prophecy in the Holy Scriptures, especially events or occasions about the founding of his false church and outbreak of the World War. Therefore, it is just apted to say that all other events, including the baptism and the first Holy Supper held prior to the official founding and registration of his cult church, were simply void or insignificant and senseless acts. It's really and very miserable for these souls who were baptized by Sir Felix Manalo during and before he formally established and registered his cult church. Logically, they were not true members of his church. Then in the late part of 1914, he assigned Mr. Justino Casanova and Norberto Asuncion as charge makers or emissaries or sugong manggagawa. He thereby sent them to Pateros and Pasig to propagate his teachings and bringing with them his manifestations in outline format called texto, and which were of Sir Felix Y. Manalo's own handwriting. In large part of Tondo, the preaching of Sir Felix Y. Manalo by denunciations or debates with tirades became widespread in almost every street and corner and on every Sunday from high noon until midnight. The turnouts were so huge from among those who were gasping for the word of truth, together with those simply a fan of mockery and humiliation. Along with these regular events, the notions about nationalism or patriotism strongly resonated. The desire for an absolute independence from the American government is also very active all around at the time. Consequently, the cult church of Sir Felix Y. Manalo became highly attractive for being the only genuine Filipino fellowship contesting all foreign Protestants and Roman Catholics. This movement was endorsed and welcomed by well-known and prominent Filipino politicians like Manuel L. Quezon and Sergio Osmeña Sr., and who were diligently working for independence of the Philippines from the Americans. Likewise, the fear and apprehensions being brought by the war quickly alluring our Filipino countrymen to quickly embrace the teachings of Sir Felix Manalo. Predominantly, the quest our countrymen for haven about God or spirituality during this time caused them easily attracted into his cult society or church. They were easily made to believe about the fast looming end of the world and the nearest return of the Lord Jesus Christ. Our countrymen are seriously being intimidated or frightened by this manner of preaching, for which they said salvation per se is only available in the cult church of Sir Felix. Following such considerable growth of Sir Felix Church in early part of 1915, the first central office or Pamunuan Central was built. It was just a small cottage made from palm, some wood and bamboos at Diodato Street in the town of Tondo within the city of Manila. Moreover, with the help of Marcelo Leman, who worked for AGMP, he provided some surplus and stolen office supplies, a variety of furnishings such as the chairs, tables, papers, writing ink, typewriter, or maquinilla, and a small copier or printing machine for the reproduction of typewritten texto of Sir Felix Y. Manalo. Sometime in the middle of the same year, Sir Felix conducted his first pastoral class of prospective ministers and church makers, or emissaries. This was called class or clase and held in the house of his brother in faith, Leoncio Javier of Tondo, Manila. The first group of student ministers were as follows: Justino Casanova, Norberto Asuncion, Norberto Cruz, Federico Inocencio, Marcelo Leman, Sancho de Guzman, Teodoro Santiago, Santiago Lopez, Teofilo Ora, Januario Ponce, Basilio Santiago, Quirino Santos, and Benito Simbilio. During this time, the regular monthly monetary blessing, or wage or salary, was created. 10 pesos allotment for every minister who completed the class, and 5 pesos for those still undergoing the studies. Those who were holding or having additional duties or functions in the central office, such were the offices of Secretary General and Principal Treasurer, received 12 pesos every month. Regarding the Evangelical War, Sir Felix sent Justino Casanova together with Santiago Lopez and Teodoro Santiago as his emissaries to Giginto, Bulacan, to spread the teachings about his cult society or false church. Just after 2 months, they were able to establish the local district of Tabi and build therein a tiny wooden church building for worship. At the outset of Sir Felix's own ministry, it's worth knowing that his friends and allies assigned him the word bird snatcher. Obviously, this makes him celebrated and popularly known by assumed name, Praying Felix. And why? Well, that is because of his primary mode of coax and allure is by snatching or praying fellow former members in the colorum who are now being chased as rebels by the American government. From among the Protestant Methodists and Presbyterians marked by sexual harassments. From Catholics who were longing for the word of truth and salvation, and from worshiping images, and from the purgatory. And fellow Adventists or Sabbatists secretly longing for toxic beverages and mountain animals meat. His fellow ministers had now begun ordinarily referring to him by the assumed nickname, Praying Felix. It's the bansag or palayaw in Filipino lingo. Later, and out of Sir Felix Y. Manalo's crooked or twisted thoughts, he devised his scams by aligning himself with the prophecy written in the book of Isaiah. He thereby likened himself with the heroic character King Cyrus and stole the nature of the prophetic title called Bird of Prey. On March 26, 1916, all the texto prepared by Sir Felix Y. Manalo in outline format or balangkas na forma were finally typed and printed out for the salaried ministers and church makers, or emissaries. This work was headed by the church maker Marcelo Lemen, who had the necessary experience in printing. He was assisted by a very lovely young and charming 13 years of age member of the church choir or mang-aawit or coro named Miss Rosita Trillanes. Recently, she just graduated from elementary school or mababang baitang na pag-aaral, and she's tasked in typing the texto being handwritten by Sir Felix Y. Manalo. However, during this time, Madame Honorata conceived her second child from Sir Felix, and for this reason, the young Rosita took over her Madame's paperwork, the job in the church at the central office as instructed by him. She then obviously became a devoted follower and obedient helper of Sir Felix in his texto preparation. There were 4 and up to 5 texto every month being prepared and typewritten by Miss Rosita at the central office in Tondo. The printed copies were being distributed along with the handing of salaries or monetary compensations to all ministers and church makers or emissaries. All these were being held during the regular and monthly executive ministerial meeting at the central office. Just for the goodness sake of his church administration, Sir Felix, therefore, strictly enforced his clever wit to the entire congregation not to use the word salary or wage or compensation being provided every month to the ministers and church makers or emissaries. Instead, the word blessing from heaven that was being granted by the administration shall be used. This also shall not be neither said nor discussed by every minister and church maker or emissary anywhere and in front of anyone, except and only during executive ministerial meeting in the central office. Accordingly, in this manner, it may never cause or serve as a stumbling block to the overall membership in his cult church. The fact, therefore, Sir Felix and his administration wanted to emphatically portray their divine evangelical teaching and propagation as were solely voluntary and charitable. The way this may be perceived or seen in the eyes and mind of the entire congregation, not a commercialization. The topic about the true biblical name of the church, which is Iglesia ni Cristo per se, became the most common entry subject of Sir Felix Y. Manalo, and which is being preached in every weekly exposition or sermon by his ministers and church makers or emissaries. Also included always is the condemnation of the beliefs and practices or ceremonies of Catholics and Protestants. In his protocols, he denounced obscene vices such as drunkenness, gambling, wearing of jewelry and sorts of body decorations. He also strictly forbid the reading of the Holy Bible by ordinary members or laymen other than the ministers and church makers, just the same exact manner as the Spanish priests did to the fellow Filipinos before. There were only 2 worship services being held or conducted every Sunday during this time. One is in the morning and the other is in the afternoon for those who miss the morning service. All the collected monetary offerings, contributions, and donations were taken directly to the central office every Monday by duly elected district treasurers in each locale or locality. To my very dear brothers and sisters, friends, countrymen, and acquaintances, may you please stay tuned for the upcoming Part 8 of the Biography of Sir Felix Manalo Isagun in my next presentation on the Internet of the Cyber World. Again, to my very dear brothers and sisters, friends, countrymen, and acquaintances, may you please don't forget to like, share my videos, and subscribe also to my YouTube channel so you can easily follow through on my next significant manifestations or testimonies. Thank you very much.